Hello internet friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lindsay or LiJo, and today we're going to be taking a peek into the young INTJ mind as we analyze some tests that were done by a psychologist when I was 12 years old. The young INTJ, very interesting, unique breed. If you'd like to talk to me more about this or anything related to your cognitive journey, you can book a video session with me below on Snug. So here we go. All right, so let's get into the results, shall we? So I'm gonna start with my 12-year-old summary, and I had one that was done when I was 16, a different kind of test, but we're gonna go into the 12-year-old one today. And it's interesting, I really did outperform in a particular area versus some other areas, and I think it was something that kind of surprised myself and my parents, and even looking back at it now, I was like, that's really interesting. So we're going to dive right into the summary from the psychologist. He says, Lindsay tends to be perfectionistic and displays some anxiety with less preferential materials. She attempts to avoid or hurry in areas where she views herself as not being able to achieve perfection. She works diligently when she encounters materials she enjoys. Lindsay enjoys areas where she achieves her own notion of success. Lindsay attempts to avoid and does not like areas where she does not perform to her own expectations. So there's a few things that stand out to me here. One is, who is setting the benchmark of expectation? Is it the self or is it the external world? Is it the subject? Is it a subjective view of what the standard is? Or is it an external benchmark? And what he's really saying here is the benchmark is set by me. A lot of times you see this with the introverted functions, especially when there's an introverted function first, because the brain is essentially not looking to the external points of data primarily from a very first point. It is looking to the self, the subjective viewpoint of how it's seeing the world and where the standard lies. So that's one of the things I see here first. The second thing I'm seeing here is a little bit of IJ-ness even from the very beginning, which is that sense of wanting to control the known information and being very aware of what the known information, what the known abilities are, and not wanting to just go and just try the other things just for the heck of it. Just because, you know, why not? Let's try the variety. It's like, no, I already know in which areas I should perform well, and I want to do those areas, and I don't really want to do the new, different kind of stuff as much. I much rather do things that I know that I'm going to be successful at and that I have a conceptual understanding of. And this test in particular is made up of two parts, which had several subparts underneath them. One part being the performance scale IQ and the other one being the verbal scale IQ. And I outperformed exceptionally in the performance scale IQ versus verbal. And you might be saying, well, which is what? What is one or the other? Well, the performance IQ is a score derived from the administration of selected subtests, which are designed to provide a measure of an individual's overall visuospatial intellectual abilities. So this is about visuospatial, the ability to visualize things in different kinds of ways, which show different patterns in cognition. Whereas the verbal IQ score is measured from acquired knowledge, verbal reasoning, and attention to verbal materials. So I did superior in the visuospatial side of the intelligence test, and the verbal side, just the lecturing, the listening, the collecting of data from a verbal auditory perspective, not as good. And one of the areas I found most interesting about this is the area that I really scored the strongest in, or one of the areas, was the perceptual organization. And you're like, perceptual organization, well, what is that? Perceptual organization is the process of grouping visual elements together, that's the organization part, so that one can more readily determine the meaning of the visual as a whole. And then this definition is saying that we care about perceptual organization because it allows us to make rapid sense of things we see. But more than that, we can use it to lead the viewers to a conclusion we desire in a fashion that suits our purpose. So they're giving two pieces of context of why this is relevant, why this kind of intelligence is relevant. One, they're saying is, it allows basically for you to take cues and make an inference of how things should come together and work. This is kind of NI in a nutshell. Now, it's a very visual definition of how NI is working, but at the end of the day, it's taking cues and being able to put things together in a particular way that makes up a whole from, like saying, multiple parts. The funny part about this is they're actually giving like a more business reference to it of why it's important in an intelligence way, and that's because it says, we can lead the viewer to make the conclusion that we desire. That is controlling the tribe, folks, in a nutshell. Very IJ-ish. It'd be interesting to see how other types score in this area, but definitely is painting a nice picture of what NI is doing a lot of the time, or even possibly an SI, depending on the sexual modalities, feminine and masculine of that person as well. So very interesting to start off with. Now, the area that I did the worst in this test was this particular index that is called the Freedom from Distractibility Index. And what this is measuring is basically, and this is for children, is the child's ability to retain information, to have memory. It's also talking about number faculty, short-term memory, working memory, and a lot of things that when I kind of am reading this, I'm like, wow, that sounds like a lot of SI, but also a lot of awareness in the moment that is needed in order to kind of take in these pieces. So it's very attentionally focused in terms of attention in the moment. What is the person, what is the child retaining in the present moment? And when you hear something like distractibility, it's like, oh, is this person getting, distracted by every little thing here? It's not necessarily measuring that. What it is measuring is the ability to have this kind of memory taken in the moment and then applied in a very short-term fashion. And it definitely was not something that I scored well in. And looking back, one of the things I can say here is that this does lend itself to consume low, if you're familiar with objective personality, but also, extroverted sensing low. This would make a lot of sense because in the moment, how many pieces of sensory data are you taking in? And so if you're missing a lot of those data points because you're looking at how the whole is coming together, well, yeah, you're going to seem like you're aloof. You're going to seem like your head is in the clouds, that you're, thinking of something else, right? Whereas you're just kind of missing all of these data points to begin with. All right, so we hit performance scale IQ, which was high. Perceptual organization was high. Processing speed, which was relatively high. Verbal scale was average. The verbal comprehension was very average. And like I said, the freedom from distractibility was my lowest score. Benton visual test I scored perfectly on, whereas, an average score for someone my age and intelligence should have been around 8 out of 10, where I was getting 10 out of 10. On this next section, where she talks about here, it kind of made me laugh a few times because he says, personality testing reveals no psychopathology. She endorses one critical item. This is really interesting. And he quotes, "I can't seem to control what happens to me." Lindsay explains that her parents tell her what to do, and she is of the opinion that she has to listen to them. Although during the testing conference, Lindsay expressed this belief, she was also comfortable stating it. Okay, so no fluctuation in energetic state. Very interesting. She was also comfortable expressing her opinions regarding the testing results and the recommendations. And so what was so interesting here that he points out is, in a very calm and collected state, I bring this to his attention that I can't seem to control essentially like my environment, right? And the things that I have to do, the things that lie ahead of me, right? But in a very calm state. And so you see this a lot with the IJs and the EPs, right? However, the EP swing of this is more in the demon state of like, I need freedom, so don't control me, bro. And the IJ is coming from a state of responsibility. So the IJs who are seeking control, if I'm a child, right, I cannot drive yet. I cannot, determine scheduling for myself yet. Well, I'm at the whim of my parents. And if my parents are late for picking me up, if, they decide to change things last minute, I don't have a car. I don't have finances. I can't control really these things at this state in my life. And it's funny because I was bringing that up at this point as, I have the need, I have the responsibility from a cognitive perspective to control these things because I would do them differently, but I can't do that yet. And just really interesting how he kind of picks that up from our conversation. Another interesting point here is that I'm under the opinion that I have to listen to my parents. Not saying that this is going to always be a tribe over self thing, a TE over FI thing. However, it would be a more common trend from those that are DE over DI. Just the belief, just the opinion that I do have to listen to my parents because I am tribe over self, and that's just the way things kind of are. Really interesting on that perspective as well. And this next part really kind of hit me right in the FI because he said, Lindsay states that her career aspirations include recording audio and video works. 12-year-old Lindsay definitely had her eye on something, didn't she? And then this part right after cracks me up. He said, when asked to generate 3 wishes, Lindsay responded, I don't know. I don't really need anything. That was it. There was no further wishing of anything. It was just, I don't need anything. Consume last, again, I think this is a pattern that we're seeing here, is the I don't need to consume anything. As a child, all I can say is I was very much at peace. I was very much in this Zen state throughout life. Now, of course, you go through fluctuations of, being a teenager and your hormones and this and that. But overall, I was a very content and even keeled individual. So yeah, I was content. That's really all there is to it. And just a few final notes here. He says, achievement testing also evidences Lindsay's perfectionism and anxiety. Lindsay attempts to rush through content areas where she lacks confidence and competence. So again, being aware of the areas in which I have known knowledge, known information in terms of how to approach something, how to do something. And the other areas, the areas that are new, different, like that are areas I know can predict I will not achieve well. I rather get through those as quickly as possible. Some additional things here when it came to the writing and the reading category, which my parents had some concerns about because, well, it says it right here, because I had a superior vocabulary for written or read words, superior writing fluency, written expression very high. My reading comprehension was also very high. However, the proofing, the punctuation, the capitalization, spelling, all poor. So the areas in which you needed to go back and have that refined eye towards the sensory, the way that words sounded. Another thing in here they talk about a lot is word attack. So the ability to see a word and know how to say it, not very good. I was always a mumbler my entire life. They tried to get me to go to the speech classes that I did not want to go to, and I don't think I ever ended up going to them. But the ability to kind of see a word and then say it was very hard to me. A lot of this to me kind of sounds like the SI nature of writing. The critical eye to how things are spelled, the details, I was missing a lot of the details. And again, there was no actual learning disability here, because at the other side, it's like you have a high range on the other end of, well, why is someone with such a high vocabulary not being able to spell the words right? So it's a big gap. But in a lot of ways, it's how our brains compensate. And we do go with our strengths, right? We do go with our saviors before the others. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you got a little bit of an insightful snapshot into my young mind. I certainly did. I love looking at these things. There's some more that I'm going to go through as well. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, internet friends.